evening, and welcome to Artbeat. I've gotten married since the last time I was with you, so my new name is Susan Steele Mulholland, and tonight we have a great treat for you. We're going to the Barn Studio Gallery of Anita Gronendahl. She does serigraphy, which is a hand-pulled silkscreen process. Not only will we get to tour her gallery, but she'll be showing us how she does this. Come with me and let's meet Anita. Anita, it's nice to be here in your Barn Studio and Gallery.
Welcome.
You have shows here periodically, I understand.
Yes, we're having 2 a year now. I added a couple new ones in the last couple of years, but we have the space in the walls to show off artwork, and I like to use it.
To do it. Tell me about this print.
This was a group of annuals I had planted by the outdoor area for last summer, and I did a sketch. I decided it would make a nice print.
Oh, and it does.
That's fairly recent.
It does. Oh, I see over here you have, it must be the Jersey Shore? Is it the Jersey Shore?
Yes, that's down at Cape May. I belong to a little print group, and we went down there for an annual meeting 2 years ago. And it does take me about a year or so to get my thoughts together and down on paper. So it was a lovely fall-type day with the late shadows, and
oh, I see this one's won an award.
yes, that's the latest award.
In New York.
In
Nice.
show in New York.
Very good. Oh, this must be your barn with your horses.
That is underneath this more modern, redone upper barn.
Yes.
The old stone, Bucks County stone, and the original bank barn.
Are you a horsewoman?
No, I have ridden, but we just take in old stray horses.
Oh, this is a retirement
This
center.
is the retired horses, yes.
And is this, what are you using this one for? Is this a new one?
This is the new one that I'm going to be using on a brochure for a garden exhibit. A first here, where we've had a theme for a show, and it'll be a group show with 18 artists.
And you're a gardener also?
Yes, it's become
Your
more and more
avocation, is it?
a passion with me.
Yes.
I have to steal the time to do that, usually the end of the day.
Can we go upstairs?
Please.
Oh, Anita, that is one of my favorite prints, this geraniums.
Oh, thank you.
And this is won an award, I see.
Yes, and this is the one that UNICEF chose to put on one of their greeting cards, which I'm very proud of.
That is so lovely. And this one, this typewriter. I also, it has a lot of awards.
Yes, that was something my daughter bought at an auction for $10, an old typewriter, and I thought it was so interesting I wanted to study all the different views of it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So that was a challenge.
What awards it won? First? Wow.
Yeah,
It
I think it was enough that they
You
saw
did
that
mostly
in it.
business?
Yes, that's been a corporate kind of piece.
Mm-hmm. Oh, over here I see a lemons. Tell us the story behind this one.
Well, this was a bowl that my great-grandmother had, and I always admired it, and I had wanted to do some lemons in a very designy way, and I thought I would use that in the whole
You
picture
can
that
almost
way.
smell them, I think.
Oh, thank you.
And the boats. Were you a yachts person?
We were boaters for years before we had the farm, and this was from the Annapolis Boat Show. I've done a series of these. This is the third in the series. The most colorful, the others were more of gray blues.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you usually put titles and then you number your prints.
Yes, they're all titled, and this is Boats at Dock.
What was, this one is lemons.
Just lemons.
Mhm. Oh, I see another room to look
Yes,
at.
there's lots of space here. We can hang about 150 framed pieces.
I see, this has to be the tile works? Is this the tile works?
Yes, this is the Moravian Tile Works, and I had done it shortly after a trip to Italy, and felt inspired by the similarities there to push it and make it a little more Italian than it
I'm sure
is.
Mercer, of course, was influenced by the same.
Oh, he was,
Yeah,
sure.
But this is more whimsical.
Well, I like to take liberties and redesign things sometimes.
And beside it, I recognize this, but tell us where it is.
Well, this is Florence, Italy.
Yes.
And there was a little cafe where I sat and sketched the city from. And the birds obligingly came and posed for me.
Because it's known for its tile, this color.
Yes, that
for the
lovely
roofs.
sienna.
Well, this is just a delight for the eye. Piano. Why a piano?
This was done at about the same time as the typewriter, and I think it was my mechanical period. This was my mother's piano that we kept. She was a professional pianist and organist, and so I'm pleased to have it.
Did she ever get to see it?
No.
But this has also won awards.
Yes,
I guess the technical
different,
people really love to give awards.
well,
And this one over here is so different. Because, well, you don't usually do people, do
I
you?
don't. It's not a conscious thing, but they just don't find their way into my pieces too often.
And this is called On the Road.
On the Road, this is from an old family album that I have a lot of fun with. And
Your family?
my family, I believe that was my mother and my grandfather. And apparently when you had these old cars, I think it's a 1910 Cadillac or something, you'd go 10 miles and the wheel wouldn't fall off. So, or you'd have to fix the flat. So that was kind of fun to do.
When you begin a print, what inspires you? Or where do you decide? How do you
I
decide?
always have more ideas than I can ever
Yes.
do. So I've just got to pick out what I think is the best idea and develop it.
And
But they're all very personally
you really are
involved.
entwined, and
Yes.
with your titles we can tell that.
Yeah.
Are you a disciplined artist? Do you come into the studio frequently?
Yes, I work every day, including Sundays.
That really is discipline.
And but I enjoy it. It's not.
Yes, it's something you look forward to.
Yes.
And your sketchbooks, have you kept sketchbooks for years and years?
Yes. And some trips that we've taken, I've been able to take the time to do more sketching.
Yes. And when you sketch, do you then color them?
I use a magic marker. I have a set of colored markers, and since you already separate the colors, it helps me when I translate that into a print.
And it helps you remember.
Yes, it helps me remember, but it's not like a watercolor where you have a big blend. You
Right.
have a definite orange and a definite blue, and they're great to travel with. You can just put
Yes.
them in your bag and...
Yes. So your husband must be very patient.
Yes, he is. He's a
Yes.
good fellow. No doubt about it.
Well, we really have enjoyed looking at this. You know, after seeing these, I would really like to know how you make a print. Would you take us into your studio?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Good. Let's go. Anita, this is not your work, is it? I think this Harriet's, Harriet Ermintrout. We visited her a few months ago.
And she's my guest artist this month.
Oh, how nice. These are beautiful, aren't they? Some of these, I think, are Bucks County.
Yes, quite a few.
That says State Street, so that must be Newtown.
Right.
We visited her at her home. And over here, you must enjoy her work, too, to have invited her.
She's been here before, too, and that's...
Well, this one, let's see, the old Calvin grist mill. I know she paints a lot in New England. That might be from New England.
It could be. This I know is Newtown. I believe that's looking out her back window.
Oh, yes. I think she's painted that house before,
I
too,
think
that
so.
pinkish color.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss doing watercolor when you see some of this?
I do. When I see a lovely watercolor, I think, oh, it would be nice. But you can't just pick it up, put it down that easily.
But you
can't.
do your water for
I
watercolor.
do, but I don't feel they're finished. They're always put on a shelf. They wouldn't be
Oh, that's
displayed.
sad. That's sad. Let's look at a few more Harriets before we go to your studio.
This is one of her newer ones, and I think she's really got the feeling of light and shadow there.
And that Victorian feeling it's so prevalent in Bucks County.
Yes.
Along with the old stone farmhouses, we have a lot of Victoria. And this must be Philadelphia.
Yes, she said she did some sketching from a tall window and got a lot
Oh,
of these
yes.
views, which I
Mhm.
think are very difficult, very good.
Yes. And this Eaglesmere. I haven't been there yet, but that's in Pennsylvania.
Yes, and this, I believe, is the Betsy Ross house.
Oh, yes. Well, we were on our way to your studio. Shall we go?
Let's.
Okay. Anita, it's nice to be able to see the process you go through. After seeing those lovely prints in the tour of your studio, to see how you'd make them. What are you doing right now?
Well, I am reducing the area of the screen that is open. I've started a new print, and I've done one color so far. The green area here is a film like this that I have cut and adhered to the screen. And after I printed my overall warm tone, I'm gluing those areas out, and then I'm going to print another color on top of that. And then I'll glue those areas out, and it'll probably go on through about 20 steps, I think, for this particular piece. Underneath here is my working sketch, and
oh, that's beautiful.
It's not done in as tight detail as some of them. It's a rather loose watercolor. I want that soft effect, so there'll be a lot of decisions to be made as I go along. But because I want a warm feeling, I've started with that nice warm tone. And I'll be careful not to get any of my blues under my yellows, unless I'm in a shadow area. So it'll be very interesting to do.
Do you always start with a watercolor?
A watercolor or an acrylic sketch. I find watercolor easy to work with. Acrylics are more brilliant colors, and I do like working with brilliant color. So again, it depends on the subject and what the end effect is.
So if we look at one of yours that is more muted, does that mean that it's probably come from a watercolor?
If you see one that's quite soft and has a lot of graded shapes and tones, more likely it was begun with the watercolor.
Well, now, what caused you to do this one? It's a beautiful setting here. It looks very romantic.
Well, we like to travel. A lot of my inspiration is from travel, and we took a lovely trip to England a few years ago. And in one of the spots, this still life was waiting for us. Fresh flowers, fruit, wine, and I sat down and made a little sketch of it. And since I've worked on this, I reworked the sketch. But so I'm calling it Warm Welcome, because it was a very warm welcome.
You title all of your pieces?
Usually when I'm working on the sketch, a theme will come to me, a name will come to me.
So you travel with sketch?
Yes, sketchbooks, some watercolors, and a 35mm camera too.
So you also use photographs to go from?
Yes, if I don't have time to sketch, I prefer to work from a sketch. But I can work with a slide as though I were there since I took it.
Yes.
I have an easel slide projector that I can leave on for hours, and I can just put myself back in the spot.
So you are a self-taught photographer?
No, I did study some photography in art school.
Where did you get your training?
I went to the Philadelphia College of Art for 3 years. I was majoring in advertising design, which I think has helped my printmaking because it makes you think in a graphic way.
And then, did you come out of school, though, going into only prints?
No, I came out of school as a married woman.
Oh.
and after we'd started our family, I did some watercolors. I worked with oils. I was trying to find my way around. And I studied with Howard Watson at Abington Art Center for several years in watercolor. Then I got out my old silkscreen and books because I've always done my Christmas cards, and I thought that would be a wonderful way to do them.
Yes, I noticed that you have them hung around your studio. They're lovely.
Thank you.
So that's actually what got you then into printing again.
Yes, I did a sample print, and I knew I'd found my medium. That was it. And so I've been doing that for 17 or 18 years, printmaking only.
Can you look back at your early ones and see how you've grown?
Yes, I see technically I have grown, and hopefully artistically. I always hope that the next one will be a step ahead and better than the last.
Well, they're lovely.
Thank you.
What is this?
Well, this, I'm getting ready for a demonstration, and I like to show how a film is cut. I use 3 or 4 different stencil mediums, and I should perhaps explain that silk screening is basically a stencil, just like the simple ones that we did in grade school.
Yes.
The big difference is that you don't need any little ties to hold those delicate shapes together, that the silk is acting as the tie. That's how you can get all your subtle little shapes. So this is one of my favorite stencil mediums, and I have a little knife
Oh, yes, right here.
Very sharp little, like an X-Acto knife. This is a chart pack knife. And you always work off your screen for this. It's an emulsion on a glassine backing. And the trick is to cut through the emulsion only and not through the backing. And I would not usually be working on my screen.
No.
But you cut through your edges, and you can, I like this knife because you can really be very free with it.
And it's very sharp.
Yeah, it's extremely sharp. If you undercut things, you're apt to rip this taking it off, and of course the pressure controls the overcutting. When I taught, I found that it was very difficult to get my students not to be over conscientious and bear down, and when the back of this is buckled, then it won't adhere properly. So there's a lot of little tricks. When this is cut, you then get an edge, and I was a little scared of my screen there, so maybe I didn't pull hard enough, but you get an edge under here and you pull. It helps a lot to have fingernails, which I never have because the solvents I use are very hard on your hands and your nails. But perhaps you can see there that you peel off a nice clean edge shape. The glue that I use is a hide glue. I have a jar of it there. It's a natural product. I thin it with hot water, and I draw directly on my screen and glue right on the top.
And then the glue keeps the color from going.
The glue will block out, but I have to make it a 2-step process. After I've glued, looking through it like this, I then have to get behind it with a light up above and redo the whole thing to make sure it's properly blocked out. But you get a very different edge with glue. You get a much softer look.
Than the process you just described.
Yes, this gives you a very hard edge. The glue gives you a softer edge, and you can even blend it with your finger to get a very soft edge.
So you use this sometimes for your prints?
Yes,
you just show this, and then oftentimes for more romantic, more muted, you use the glue?
Yes, but I have also used some of the film. I want this glassware to look very glassy, and I've got a doily over here that I wanted to keep very, very white. So it's nice to contrast your edges within a piece. And a third stencil that I'll probably use in this too is a paper stencil. And I find that a nice layout pad is a very good weight paper. That can be adhered just by lowering the screen, and the ink will hold it in place. I was saying that I don't want any of my blues to muddy my yellows, but I want to work back and forth from warm to cool and dark to light. So I will block out by putting this over, say, that orange napkin, cutting the proper shape or tearing it for a soft edge, which is nice effect too.
That would be pretty.
So I will have all 3 in this.
Well, now, then how do you take the glue off?
The glue is dissolved with water. The paper will just peel off, and I'll clean my screen with mineral spirits. The lacquer thinner, or the lacquer film, is taken off with lacquer thinner. So I can't use that to clean my screen until the very end, or I'll destroy this initial stencil.
All right,
so everything has its proper solvent.
Now you mentioned how many steps. Well, how many steps might be in this one?
Well, I think it may go up to 20 screenings. And if you could pass me that squeegee behind the glue. I didn't talk about how I apply the colors. When this is all finished, I will remove my working sketch. This pile of paper here is the edition that I'm working on. I'm aiming for an edition of about 90. And I've already given every sheet of paper that first coat of ink. I'll mix my ink to a consistency of like heavy Vaseline. I was standing at the end where you are and put it down here, lower the screen on the paper, and using 2 hands, pull it firmly across the screen, lift my ink, carry it back for the next pass. And then if you can see these hanging clips, I have to hang all the work to dry for 2 to 3 hours. Then I like to take it down rather than leave it overnight because sometimes they buckle a little bit. So my timing is important.
Will you try to do all 90 at one time?
I must do all 90 at one time because I've made that stencil. When I make the next stencil, I've destroyed the other.
Finished.
And so there's never any way of going back. It's not like having an etching plate that I've decided I want 100 prints, but I'm going to print 5 first and do the rest later. I have to decide before I begin how many I want in the edition, and I must print them all right then and there.
I've always heard, you know, we always look at we saw the numbers on your prints. Maybe it's 5 over 90.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that if you buy the 5th one that was made out of 90, it is indeed more valuable than the 90th over 90?
Not with a silk screen. With an etching, with something that would have a plate that would wear down, it would mean more. It's much more arbitrary with a silk screen. When I'm printing, they do get all mixed up. And at the end, I will go through them, and often the lower numbers are a better quality, but sometimes there's no difference from beginning to end. And I do, of course, destroy ones that I don't feel are up to par at all.
Yes. Well, what kind of, is it ink or paint?
It is ink, and it's made just for silk screening. It has a self-cleaning property. It's a petroleum-based ink, beautiful, brilliant colors, and I always do mix. I've never, I don't think ever used them straight from the. I use a transparent extender. I could use a flat extender, but because I'm always looking for that little extra color coming through, I like to use a transparency. You get accidents sometimes that are very pleasing. And sometimes I really do use it transparently to create a third color.
Now, what about the fumes? You must work with a lot of fumes.
The fumes are not too good. The inks are bad. The worst is the lacquer thinner. I have an exhaust fan that I keep on from the time I open a can of ink. And then I time things so that I can go in for lunch and leave all of this. The lacquer thinner is also absorbed through your skin, so the less contact with that, the better. And I'm very careful to wash, get rid of those rags immediately. I'm just not very good wearing gloves. I did get a mask, and I feel like
and a surgeon.
Not so good with that either. So I try to be as careful as I can.
Well, look at it this way. If you ever say anything that's wrong, you can blame it on the
That's right. They say it attacks the mind, and I wonder about that.
After all, I am an artist. You know.
There's one more thing about silkscreen that I think is interesting. It's the only print medium that is not done in reverse.
Oh, right.
So if you're doing lettering or anything like that, every other one has some kind of a plate.
Yes.
So it has a lot of unique properties.
I noticed that you have something over here that explains the steps. Would you show that to us?
Now, this is a board that I made up to show the different steps to go from my working sketch to a finished print. And they're numbered. This is the first one. They're done with a glue stencil. And I blended the inks to get a little more variety in the green.
Yes, I can see the difference.
Then I removed that stencil. Unlike this reduction stencil, I did take that right off the screen, and I made another. And again blended. And this is the small yellow centers, the flowers.
Now, you've put glue on everything else?
Yes, these were all done with glue stencils, except for the final one. The flowers, again, are very obviously blended. And the final stencil is a photosensitive stencil. When I want a pen and ink effect, I use that on acetate, very dense ink, And then with the process of coating a screen with this emulsion and letting it dry and exposing it with a photo flood, I get this image on my screen and I'm able to print pen and ink effect. And then I have to carefully register that over my colored work. So there are the steps, and this I consider a simple print.
My.
5 steps are about the least I ever do.
Well, then the one that you just showed us, right here.
This will be a
20
major
step.
one, yes. And I did not show you how I register. I'm often asked how I register my prints, and I realize I didn't discuss
No.
that with you yet. If I can hand you my squeegee. This is really a key to the whole operation. And it's quite simple. It's very old-fashioned, but it works. I make little paper tabs that fit down the left-hand side and the bottom. And when I'm working on my original sketch, it is firmly attached. I was pulling that corner. Then when I put my paper from the additions in, again, I pull that corner. I don't have to tape it in place, but it assures that every single color is going to be in the proper spot, no matter how many I do. So that is a critical operation.
Anita, thank you so much for showing us this
You're welcome.
process.
My pleasure.
Artbeat would like to hear from our viewers. Drop us a line and let us know what you think about the show. Send your letters to Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901. Be sure to include your name, telephone number, and the name of your cable system. That's Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901.
I hope you've enjoyed our first half-an-hour profile on a Bucks County artist. I'm Susan Steele Mulholland. Good night.